Thank you. Ronald, thank you so much. I think we've heard three wonderful, complementary, enthusiastic presentations. Now, for perhaps about 5 to 10 minutes, if anyone has any points or questions they want to raise from the floor, now is your opportunity to our three speakers, who I'll ask to remain seated because I think you're all mic'd up to respond. Does anybody have any points or questions they want to make?
I'd like to congratulate the three speakers on what was an entertaining after dinner set of speeches. Particularly as a person steeped in manufacturing since I left school, I was completely enthralled by all three. I'd like to ask Ronald, basically, a question. Since I went into Ronald's plant in 2001, Ronald became one of my heroes in world industrial actions. And one of the things that I notice about him is he's progressed his company on tremendously over the past number of years. As an agro-processor, though, he's made the competition irrelevant, as he says. And there are a number of agro-processors in the region who are struggling a lot in trying to get themselves into the export market. So I'd like to ask Ronald what he thinks are three important vehicles to propel those companies into international market access and acceptability, if you will.
I would say quality with good packaging. Continue encouraging your profit back into the company. And of course, strong teamwork within your staff.
Thanks very much, Ronald.
Okay. Another question or point? Sasha.
Thank you very much for the three speakers as well. If you had the region's trade negotiators sitting in front of you, and you have some of them here, and you wanted to give them, if we're really talking about focusing on the things that matter, and we're talking about getting the private sector involved, if you were the voice of the private sector, what are the one or two things that you would tell them to focus on to make sure that they walk to the table with?
Let's go from one side of the panel to the other, starting here. Yes.
I think what we have to be more careful with than anything else is what I would characterize as non-tariff barriers. Those things that are not always apparent. I think the point was made earlier. A lot of the negotiations seem to be focused on the issue of the tariff, the scene. What many times we get into difficulty with are the on-scene. I could give you two concrete examples. One in Mexico and one in Trinidad. I had a situation one time where I shipped a container to Trinidad, and the customs authorities raised the concern that the signature was not one of the approved signatories on the list of carrier companies. It really was a very simple matter. And actually, the young lady who aided me in solving that from the Ministry of Trade sits in this room from Belize. But I called her, and she intervened with the Director of Trade in Trinidad, and this matter was solved in half an hour. Now, I had a serious crisis on my hand because my importer was complaining. But I mean, those things are, that one was easily crossed. Let me give you one that's a little bit more complex. Mexico. I've been trading in Mexico since 2003. Mexico has very interesting laws when it comes to movement of frozen items across the border. The way the laws are written is that the sample must be taken at the point of entry and sent to Mexico City for analysis. Now, you have to understand. I mean, you're 5 hours away. No, try more. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely illogical. So one time I was in Belize. I can say this in this forum because I don't think there's anybody from Mexico here. Though I understand it's being fed internationally. I will not give that story. What I will say to you, though, is you have to be very careful with non-tariff barriers because they can become a hurdle to trade at times. I think that would be more concern. But you know what? I think one other thing. Someone made the point earlier. Guys, a lot of this trade infrastructure exists. I think if we really want to look at the analysis for why the trade hasn't developed, it's perhaps decisions that have to be made at the domestic level to encourage exporters to take the risk. I'll close with this one. Agriculture may sound sexy, but agriculture is downright risky. Guys, I do it because I love it. I'm passionate about watching things grow, but agriculture is downright risky. Yeah.
Well, I'd have to say that from my angle, if they were here, it would be trying to ensure that we don't take a myopic approach to what export is. Being in it for so long, I think people think that the word export means to make something in point A and sell it to point B. And I think where the Caribbean has seen, I heard someone saying about Grace and other large companies and major companies, you have to have a success story to be able to move to the next level. And I think our negotiators, our regional negotiators, have to understand that we talk about export and just protecting our boundaries, and if we can make it in point A and sell it to point B. But I think for us, each industry has uniqueness to it. I'm in the beverage business. There's not a lot that I'm going to make out of taking water out of my country, adding a value added to it, and selling it around the world. So for me, there's going to come a stage after I've completed the top 3 steps that I need to make a regional and an international brand, that I'm going to have to make it, either build a plant somewhere else and somewhere in the world, partner with somebody else, expand my horizons by franchise. But we do have a challenge when we sit with certain parties that they are seeking hard cash exports, foreign exchange in, foreign exchange out. And I think for us the goal is that a region to succeed means that a region of business people, private sector, see the broader picture, compete on that wider scale, and whatever they can do to help us become internationally savvy, sit at the table for that pound of flesh, I think will be helpful for us, certainly.
Thank you. Ronald?
For us, as I said, value-added products. We have been focusing quite a lot on niche products using value-added and the backward chain, the value chain. Compounded with that, in certification, we have been moving out quite a lot of non-tariff barriers in Europe just by being certified, just by having FSSC certification. A prime example of that, we were selling to Slovakia, and they questioned a preservative. And just by issuing that certificate, it tells them that we were using the product, the preservative very wisely and within the confined laws. So overall, I feel once you do what you're doing right, you can export and realize your full potential.
Thank you. A couple more questions before we move on to the next panel. Please, sir.
Hi, I'm representing Viking Traders, Managing Director. We agree with the panel that the non-tariff barriers is one of the most difficult items for improving trade and export, especially within the Caribbean region. A particular example is dry coconuts. We know that Guyana exports 91 million coconuts a year, and for a simple pest control or phytosanitary problem, St. Lucia would not allow dry coconuts to be exported from Guyana. And I think this is another example of a hindrance to trade within the Caribbean region. And it's, really Caribbean Exports or another agency or the persons involved in trade negotiations should be able to work to find a way to promote trade in that regard. Thanks.
Who'd like to comment on that?
I think the challenge that we have within the Caribbean sometimes is more of a protectionism approach. And we see it across the board. There's no one market that uses the non-tariff trade barriers more than the other. There are some that are more successful in making it stick. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of the local manufacturers within the Caribbean have to look beyond that, beyond our own marketplaces, because I think we have to create products that are sustainable and appealing to the wider market, not just within the marketplace that we are existing. And I think that if you find your business get into a roadblock where the Caribbean markets do not offer you the margin, the return on investment, there are many other markets outside that I think you could find some kind of success story to it. And that would be just off the bat thinking, but actually trying to figure out the way around these non-tariff barriers. When you do find it, let me know, because I deal with it on a daily basis. And Banks Holdings being in the soft drink and the milk, the juice, the beer, we find that each and every single one of the Caribbean markets have a different level of non-tariff barrier that impinges on what we consider real growth, not just export containers, but real growth, because we are very cognizant that if you get a success story today, there is a challenge, because the way the laws are written, the way the influence is done, that can be short-lived if you were, if you were ready to impinge on the domestic industry within that country. So as I mentioned, for us, for Banks, we realized very early with 18 breweries in the Caribbean, certainly promoting ourselves in our own region was not a sustainable export option for us. And that is why our emphasis has been extra-regional.
Please.
Can I offer one thought? And perhaps my approach might seem a little radical, and for companies that are maybe smaller, where cash flow, flujo de caja, is a limitation, it may seem more complex. But let me offer this thought. I'm a big believer in going after markets that are more complex and sophisticated, simply because once you conquer them, the other markets seem simple. The example I'll offer you is France. France, for us, in Europe, France is a complex market. They normally pay the most, but they're very sophisticated, very picky, complex. Spain, within Europe, Spain is a major seafood consumer, but they're not as sophisticated as the French. The French are very, very picky, and they will make your life very complex and complicated. But you know what? Once you have conquered the French standard, every other market seems so basic. That's why when we came back, again, I wandered around for so many years. When we came into the Caribbean 2.5 years ago, it was, people were shocked by the quality of the product simply because we had been in France. You see what I mean? It's very different. In terms of our exports, the European market the standards are very stringent. Somebody asked me the other day about use of antibiotic, which is a common abuse in other parts of the world. Guys, I simply do not use it because we cannot. And even if we could, I wouldn't. Doesn't make any sense. I always see the use of antibiotic as a means of covering up somebody's production error. So I am vehemently opposed to it. But you know what? We couldn't have anyway. The French would not allow it. So the European market, very complex. Within the European market, France. Beyond that, the US, Mexico, the Caribbean, pretty much on the same level. Yeah. But for me, go after markets that are complex and sophisticated, because once you conquer them, everything else seems simple.
Okay, thank you. Last question to this panel, Errol Humphrey. Is there a microphone somewhere? Oh, somebody already has the mic. I hadn't seen you. Sorry. I'm sorry. Perhaps you could ask the question after the next session. Please.
Hi, David Tomlinson from the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality. And as we're on the issue of non-tariff barriers, the gentlemen here, being in the markets they are, I'm sure that they have quality management systems in place and have experienced the headaches with that. I think what I want to know, right, is an assessment of, I know it's bad in the region, in a sense, of being able to trade on the non-tariff issues related to quality management, certification. But I want to know from you, what areas of improvement do you see that we definitely need to look at? What recommendations would you put to us then for areas in quality management, in the entire quality infrastructure that we should look at with immediate effect?
You can't hear all of it. Huh?
I'm not hearing it.
In terms of quality assurance, what systems would you recommend you put in place? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I want your feedback pretty much on what deficiencies have you seen? What have you experienced in the region? What services do you need that, we're failing to provide? What?
On the quality assurance side.
Exactly.
You want to go?
Yeah, you could
Let me go first. Let me offer this thought. Listen, I have seen companies at trade shows that are for food. I'm talking about food business now, that are not HACCP certified. Honestly, don't waste your money. Don't waste your money. If you're going to operate at an international level, you have to be HACCP certified. That is such a basic hurdle to cross. And beyond HACCP certification, in the case of the US, the UK BRC certification for your plants, guys, we have to be serious about this. If you want to be a player on the international stage, quality assurance is a sine qua non. You have to have third-party verification of what you're doing. That is so basic. If that is not happening, you're not a player. So my point is, if you're in the food business, you want to be a player in the food business, you don't have a minimum hurdle in place in terms of your HACCP program, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your time. Don't go to trade shows. Get those things resolved. Government, put your money behind making sure that those companies can get their HACCP programs in place and other certification programs in Europe, for example, which are basic, because once you have them, Bob made the point, once you have them, you put it to other markets, it's simple. Oh yeah, if you have that in place, no big deal. Yeah?
So how that is being done, you can work through your local Bureau of Standards. They have companies just within here who can give you advice. You can work through EDU, you can work through Caribbean Export, and you can
get the assistance.
And you can get assistance. It costs quite a lot. It's an entirely new infrastructure you have to place within your plant, documentation. So I would advise you work through your local Bureau of Standards and EDU or Caribbean Export and the local consulting houses within the region.
Let me now wrap up this session. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of you, Alvin, Ray, Ronald, not just for your enthusiasm, but the way you've been prepared to explain your own business models and your own approach, I think has been enormously valuable.